Good morning and welcome to another episode of Iconic Freedom, the formula. We are setting a standard for accountability, the ownership of your choices, and responsibility, that ability to respond to those choices. Let each care for self and all will be cared for.
We have a new hoax. The bloodbath hoax didn't work out too well for Democrats. It was debunked in 5 minutes. Today, the media is out with a freshie, the animal hoax. Trump calls migrants animals. We watched Trump's speech last night. We didn't see him call illegals animals. So where did it come from?
Trump once again used brutal, incendiary rhetoric to describe immigrants. Here's what he said yesterday. Listen.
It's a border bloodbath, and it's destroying our country.
They're country-changing, country-threatening, and they're country-wrecking. We're going to end up with the largest deportation in American history.
They're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals. I'll use the word animal because that's what they are. We don't want them coming into our country with contagious diseases, and they have it.
Hack job. They deceptively cut Trump's speech to make it look like Trump was calling all migrants animals, when he was only talking about the one who murdered Laken Riley. Watch.
I met with the grieving family of Laken Riley. You know Laken, she was incredible. Top of her class. Everything was the top. She was the top of everything. She was incredible. I met the parents, incredible people. The 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia who was barbarically murdered by an illegal alien animal. The Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
You bash a woman's head in until she dies, you're an animal. Period.
Well, once again, we are looking at how people are being manipulated, right? I have a really interesting clip beyond that one with Jesse Waters off of his show the other day. But here's the interesting thing. So why is this important and how does it apply to the formula? Your formula, right? You're creating a formula of your own standard. And that standard is about accountability and responsibility. Well, you might be asking, well, what does that have to do with this clip from Jesse Waters and this whole thing about CNN and what the former President Donald Trump? Well, the reality is that when you look at it unemotionally, what we have to do is not just take the word of what somebody like CNN is saying. And you know what? Don't just take the word of what somebody like Jesse Waters is saying. You go and you look at it for yourself. You research it for yourself. I thought one of the most fascinating things, if you were able to listen and watch last week's podcast with the good doctor, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that, and this occurs with everybody as it happens in their awakening, they start little by little researching things, looking things up, putting, the great search in there and going down the rabbit hole of being able to see what is actually going on. Because you've been told something and it's been repeated, and that's propaganda. And when you start looking at it and start thinking about it, that's what propaganda is all about. There's a really interesting gentleman that seems to have come to light more and more recently, Mike Benz. He's on Twitter. I'm not sure what other platforms he's on, but he's been interviewed a lot, and he does a lot of quick videos. And what's really interesting is that he talks about this. He talks about how the government has created their own department of propaganda, if you will. I'm calling it that, but he calls it something else. Because that's what the government does. See, they'll do this in other countries because they want to help sway elections. Why do they want to sway elections? When we know about what self-interest is, what is self-interest? It's that desire at the bottom of it all. The supply chain is to feel good. But part of their self-interest in trying to feel good is by manipulating others. And if they're able to manipulate others by pushing out a narrative, by pushing out a story, and then they keep repeating that story over and over and over again, then what happens is then it crosses a consciousness, a threshold of consciousness, and then everybody believes it. And that's what happens with the media now. So just recently, you probably were aware, because it was in the headlines, that Donald Trump said something at a rally, I think it was in Michigan, about a bloodbath, and what he was, that if he didn't get elected, that it was going to be a bloodbath. Well, that's not what he said, and I didn't comment at the time, but I will now in conjunction with this, is that when you go and listen to the full clip, much like they did with this one that just happened this past week, they did the same thing with that one. When you listen to the full clip of that, what you hear is Donald Trump talking about if he doesn't get elected and he isn't able to, manage these trade wars, basically is what they are, where other foreign countries are bringing their goods in and they're taking away American jobs. So, it's up to you to decide if you want to go and research this. But as he is speaking about it, he's like, we're just not going to let that happen. And, he mentioned how he likes to deal and how he likes to manage things. Donald Trump is the art of the deal. I've known that since the early 80s when I was a kid. And he is the art of the deal, and he knows how. And so what he's saying in that is that if he's not elected, there's no way the current administration is even going to go down that road. And that is not in the self-interest of Americans. What do we know about reality? It moves towards something or it moves away from something. And how do we know that? We know that by the choices that people are making. So much of the time, people don't have to say anything. All you have to do is observe them. But if you want to observe reality, how does that happen? It happens because you're stepping away from the emotion that you might have about any particular situation. Most of the time, people get emotional about something because they're attached to an outcome. They're attached to the way they want things to look or to be. When you just observe something, all you do is you're looking at it. You're just like, okay, and you're just watching the actions of people. What are they doing? They did this, they did this, they did this. And what were the outcomes? It was this and this and this. It's the reality, right? We talked about what the law of nature was. So that law of nature that I talked about a couple of weeks ago is that you let reality be your best friend. You observe the basic laws of nature. And what is that? If you don't do this, then that will occur. If you do this, then that will occur. And you continue to see how it almost seems mathematical. And I think I actually said that it's one of the beauties of life, of existence, is that no matter what, it's always going to reveal itself. Reality will always reveal itself. And so, and as I just mentioned, reality is the observation without emotional ideology, because that ideology is what we get stuck in. We believe something, we don't think it, we don't know it, we believe it. Well, that's a fantasy. That's not what we're looking to do. So what is the reality? What is that law of nature regarding what we're talking about with the standard, setting your standard, and the formula? If you don't develop responsibility and accountability, then both of those qualities will impact you in the opposite manner. Self-interest will always reveal itself. If you don't develop responsibility and accountability, then both of those qualities will impact you in an opposite manner. So that's a pretty interesting statement. And I wrote it down because I thought it was so interesting when it came to my mind. If you choose, because it is a choice, if you're listening to this podcast, you know now it's a choice. This will not leave your head. This will not leave the integration of who you are, the organism that is you in this existence, in this finite existence. if you do not develop these qualities, your life will continue to be the struggle and the challenge that you are having right now. When I was a therapist, a counselor years ago, I did addiction therapy. And it was one of the things that I used to tell clients all the time. Listen, you can do whatever you want. It's no sweat off of me. I get paid either way, whether you do it or not. But if you don't do this, then just know that you will continue to have all of the struggle and the challenge and the suffering because you refuse to do it. You refuse to take ownership of the choices that you make. And you refuse to be ready and able to respond to those choices. And those qualities are part of nature. Nature requires it of you. Now, you can ignore it. You can say, I'm not going to do that. You can think you're living a consequence-free lifestyle. But I'm here to tell you that is never the case. There is no action that you take that does not have an impact. Every choice you make sets something in motion. Whatever that is, no matter how small or large, it sets something in motion. It starts to take action. Nature starts to move with that. And so being conscientious of your choices and not being so whimsical about it is really important. We are looking for a formula. We're looking for a formula of harmony. That's the standard, the formula, the responsibility, the accountability to lead to what? Harmony. Harmony in your life, where you get to enjoy life every moment of every day. And you find joy in just the smallest of things and in the grander of things. But you can't get there. You're going to stumble through it all if you don't develop these qualities, right? So when you're making choice, this is where you want to be conscious of that choice. Okay, so back to how do they manipulate you? So they manipulate you by extracting pieces of what the reality is. They don't want you to see the reality because they want to tell their story. So I think Dan Bongino actually coined this phrase is that they don't want to tell you the story, they want to tell you a story. That's a beautiful statement, and it accurately describes what we're talking about in what reality is all about. So when you saw in the clip, you saw Jesse talk about here's how they clipped it and how they tried to frame it, and then here was the reality. Well, I thought this piece of follow-up was pretty fascinating as well.
Even CNN's guests called him out. Watch this.
When he says these immigrants are animals, they're not humans, what does that suggest? I mean, isn't that brutal? Shouldn't people be condemning that?
I listened to the entire tape. He was specifically talking about the person who murdered Laken Riley in Georgia. And to be honest with you, Wolf, if somebody murders another human being, I think they deserve to be called animals.
Wolf. Oof. Ouch.
What a great moment of revealing, what the reality is and then seeing how the manipulation goes. Now, I didn't see the rest of that clip and how Wolf responded to that, but it's a pretty interesting thing that here's the deal. Wolf Blitzer is accountable for what comes out of his mouth. He is responsible for that. So if he has watched this clip, if he has seen the entirety of it, and he is manipulating the narrative, what does that say about him as an individual, as a human being? If he has not seen it, what does that say about him as a human being? So we just talked about you move towards something or you move away from it. What is the law of nature? The law of nature is if you don't do this, then this will happen. And if you do this, then this will happen. If you don't pay attention to your work, in the case of Wolf Blitzer, if you don't pay attention to the fact that this was clipped and now it has set you up to look like a phony, to look like a propagandist, that's on you, buddy. And if you did do it and you're manipulating your audience, what does that say about you as well? And that gentleman who responded, I mean, what integrity to be on, a show like that and to be able to sit there and say, listen, that's not what it said. It'll be interesting if that guy ever gets back on TV with Wolf Blitzer and company, because I'm guessing he probably won't be. This next clip is something that just happened, I think, on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, with The Rock and Will Cain from Fox. I thought this was very interesting. I'm just going to let it play itself out, and then I'll comment real quick before we wrap things up.
You made that endorsement in 2020. Are you happy with the state of America?
Am I happy with the state of America right now? Well, that answer is no. Do I believe we're going to get better? I believe in that. I'm an optimistic guy, and I believe we can get better. The endorsement that I made years ago with Biden was one I thought was the best decision for me at that time. And I thought back then, when we talk about, hey, I'm in this position where I have some influence, and it's my job then. I felt like that then. It's my job now to exercise my influence and share with this is who I'm going to endorse. Am I going to do that again this year? That answer is no.
One of the things that I find interesting about this, I'm sure there is an ideology in there. There is with a lot of people that are in this woke mentality is, we want to get along. We want everybody to get along. And what do I say at the beginning and now at the end of every podcast? Let each care for self and all will be cared for. He says something that I think is very revealing, and that is that it's my job. Really? When did it become your job? Who exactly put you in charge of this so that you were supposed to influence everybody? I'm sorry, I don't know that anybody ever turned that job over to you. So instead, really what you're telling us is that I'm now in a position, because of my public persona, I'm going to manipulate people. It's like, what? I don't think anybody asked you that. Listen, if you feel like that it is your thing, that you would like to help people and you want to do that through government, then go run for office and get into Congress and, get rid of some laws and pass some easy laws and stop all this shenanigans. But instead, you sit there and say, I'm going to use my influence. Your influence for what? What is your self-interest? So you start off with, I want to feel good, and you want to feel good about what? Trying to get somebody elected? Trying to create a story instead of the story? I thought this was a really interesting interview, and I think I just think he lacks accountability and responsibility. He has not developed those qualities. He's thinking that his role is to come out and to pontificate to everyone about who they should vote for. No, my thing is, it's not any of your business on who to vote for, and trying to influence people, to sway and manipulate people. No, I posit to you, develop personal accountability and responsibility, make your choices, and be done with it, and let others decide what they want to do. But if you're going out there and you're saying, no, this is who you should vote for, and this is who I'm endorsing, and you should follow me in that, that's not how it works. Because that is not letting each care for self, and all will be cared for. And that music means we are at the end of another podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Hey, share this with your family and friends. You never know how it might help them. Hit that like button if you would, and if you'd like to subscribe, you could do that. There's a link down below. And if you're interested in finding out more about what Iconic Freedom is all about, what this setting your standard is all about, check the link out at lulu.com. I will see you here next week. Go make it a great week. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for.